Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome to the Lagoon, and today we are going to be talking about the top 5 plants for beginners. Well, freshwater plants at least. So, let's get right into it. So coming in at number 5 is basically anything that's in the crypt family. So the crypt family has a wide variety of different plants that you can use, and I actually hesitated to put this in at number 5, but for many reasons, mostly because it's a very heavy root feeder, so it's a good idea to give it supplements at the roots, so it's good to have a soil that's more like planted tank based, but that doesn't mean that it's necessary for these crypts. It just will help them grow faster. Even if you don't have a planted substrate, or if you don't have dirt or anything like that, that's alright as well. They're just very hardy plants, they're lower light, they have very thick leaves, so you don't have to worry about things necessarily pecking on them as much, so that's just why it kind of makes for a good plant. It also has a lower light requirement. I don't know if I said that or not already, but it does, and you don't have to worry about adding CO2 to it or dosing or anything of that sort. So that's why it's a great plant for beginners, and why it's number 5, because of it being a heavy root feeder. Now coming in at number 4, we have hornwort. Now, hornwort is a type of stem plant, which means the way that it reproduces is you use cuttings. So what you do is you'll take that stem, and then you'll take scissors to it, you'll cut it off, and then you replant that. Either you can float it, or you can put it in the actual substrate itself. Now that's another reason why it's such a good plant for beginners, is because of A, it has a very low light requirement, and B, you can either grow it in the actual substrate itself and plant it down there, or you can just leave it floating kind of at the top of your aquarium. So either way, it'll be completely fine, and it actually is great for if you have fry, like guppy fry or anything like that, because they'll be able to hide in it, and then that way you won't have to worry about predation from like the parents or anything like that. So it's a low light requirement, and also because you can throw it pretty much anywhere is another reason why it is going to be at number 4 in this list. Now coming in at number 3, we have something called Anubias. Anubias is another thing similar to the crypt, in that you have basically all these different types of Anubias that fit into the larger family. So there's types that are smaller, and there's types that are a little bit larger. It's really what the size depends on what you're using in the aquarium. They basically require the same light source, like light requirements. They're lower light, and they also grow a little bit slower than most other plants, and they're also a little bit pricier. But all that being said, they're great for beginners, mostly because of their low light requirement, because they have those broader leaves as well, which means they're not as susceptible to being picked at, and then they actually give off a taste that a lot of fish don't like. So they're actually great for if you have goldfish. They'll do great in those types of settings as well. And they don't require CO2 or anything like that because of their lower growth, and you don't have to worry about planting them in anything that's heavy substrate. Actually, they prefer to not be completely submerged in the substrate. If you want, you can even put them on any pieces of like driftwood or rock that you have. All you have to do is tie them in there with a fishing line or anything like that, and they'll be all set to go. Now, number 2 is another broadleaf plant, and you'll notice why there's a lot of broadleaf is because a lot of the times they are lower light and they're slower growers, so they're not going to require that like large amount of CO2, so you won't have to worry about doing like liquid CO2 or dosing in any way like that. So, number 2 being Java fern. I've grown this under a light bulb before. That's right. I put it under a light bulb, and it grew completely fine for me. And I reproduced it even. I did clippings of it. The other thing with this is, and it's very important for Java fern, it's going to have a little rhizome, and I'll show you in a picture here. Now, with that rhizome, you never want to plant that below the substrate itself. You want to either tie that to a rock or a piece of driftwood, or just make sure that it's somehow tethered down and not in the substrate though, because if that's buried, then you're going to have some problems and the plant's going to die off eventually, so you don't want to do that. Now, all that being said, why it is being number 2 in this is because of the lower light and not as much CO2 being needed for it. And yeah, it's just a great plant overall. It's very easy to reproduce, and it actually doesn't grow as slow as the Anubias does. It grows a little bit faster, and I'd say even a little bit faster than a lot of the crypts as well. It's just a very unique plant, and it's definitely worth its number 2 spot. Now, coming in at number 1 is my absolute favorite plant in the whole wide world, and that is Anacharis, or Elodia, whatever you want to call it. And Acarus is a fantastic plant. It's definitely my favorite. It's another one of those stem plants like the hornwort. So basically it reproduces with the cuttings as well. And it's just great because I grew this under a light bulb as well. It's the same exact thing. It's not going to require a lot of light for it, and it doesn't require any dosing of CO2 or anything like that. It doesn't require a fancy substrate. You can also float it and it'll grow just as well there, and it's a great food source for any turtles or goldfish or anything like that. So you can grow it out either outside if you live in kind of like a warmer climate area, or you can do it in the summer, or you can grow it under a light bulb, like I said, set up a separate tank entirely dedicated to that, and then just feed that to if you have turtles or even goldfish whenever you go away on like a trip or something like that. You can just feed it to them and it'll be great for that. But it also looks great too. It's an amazing plant and it's definitely my favorite. But yeah, that's basically my top 5 list. Thank you guys for watching. Now, I do want to hit on one more thing, and a lot of people are going to be mad at me for not including any mosses in here, and that includes like Java moss, flame moss, things like that. And I'm going to say the number one reason for that is because whenever something goes wrong in your aquarium, there's a lot of like fluctuation. If that moss doesn't take hold within the first week or so, it's going to start disintegrating in your tank. And whenever people are starting new tanks and they're a little bit newer to the hobby, it's more likely that you're going to have shifts in your water chemistry. And whenever that happens, I notice that moss a lot of the times is going to have a little more difficulty taking root. Now, that being said, once it takes root, it's really going to explode and take off. So if you're successful with it taking root, then you're going to have an explosion and you're going to have giant mats of it and it'll be fantastic. But the problem is with the newer Aquarius, I find that they have trouble having it to take root, which is why I didn't include it on this list. So yeah, but thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and I will see you guys next time.